The Olympic Aquatic Stadium in Paris was gripped by a tense silence when Beatrice Miller entered the competition area. 15,000 people filled the stands. Cameras from 150 countries were broadcasting live. The world's best swimmers were there for the women's 400-meter freestyle heats. But all eyes were fixed on Beatrice. She was 24 years old, her body sculpted by a decade of relentless training, her black hair tied in a tight bun. She wore the Team USA swimsuit red, white and blue that shimmered under the stadium's powerful lights. And she wore sunglasses. Inside an aquatic stadium, minutes before an Olympic competition, the murmuring started immediately. Journalists whispered among themselves. Commentators speculated live on air. Competitors from other countries looked on with a mixture of curiosity and disdain in the American broadcast booth. Sports commentator Michael Roberts tried to maintain professionalism, but his voice trembled slightly. And there is Beatrice Miller, representing the United States in the 400-meter freestyle. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding her at these Olympic Games, ... Double quotes his co-commentator, former Olympic swimmer Patricia Moore, interrupted him. Controversy is an understatement, Michael. What we are witnessing is possibly the greatest controversy in the history of Olympic swimming. The camera zoomed in on Beatrice's face. Even through the sunglasses, you could see the tension in her jaw, the determination in her posture. In the front row of the stands, sitting behind starting block number 4, where Beatrice would compete, was her coach, David Chun. He was 42, a former Olympic swimmer himself, with graying hair at his temples and that expression only decades of high-performance sport can create, a mixture of desperate hope and paralyzing fear. Next to him was Helen Miller, Beatrice's mother. 53 years old, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, tears already streaming down her face before the race had even begun. And there was someone else, a young man, perhaps 26, sitting 3 seats to the right of David. He wasn't crying. He just watched Beatrice with an intensity that was almost physical, as if willpower alone could help her swim faster. His name was Ryan Cooper, and he was the reason Beatrice was there. The chief judge of the race, a severe Frenchwoman named Dominique Leclerc, approached Beatrice with a concerned expression. She spoke in English, her voice low but audible to the ambient microphones. "Miss Miller, I need to confirm something before I allow you to compete. The regulations are clear about equipment." Beatrice interrupted her, her voice firm in impeccable English. "My sunglasses are not competitive equipment. They are a medical necessity. I have documentation approved by the International Olympic Committee." Dominique hesitated. "Yes, I've seen the documentation, but I need to understand. You are going to swim wearing these glasses? They are not hydrodynamic. They will add significant drag." "I know," Beatrice replied simply. "But then why?" Dominique began. "Because without them, I cannot see anything at all. With them, I can see shapes, shadows, light, enough to know where I am in the pool. Without them, I would be swimming completely blind." The silence that followed was heavy. Dominique looked at the other judges, then back at Beatrice. "Miss Miller," she said carefully, "your official diagnosis, ... retinitis pigmentosa," Beatrice answered. And now her voice was being picked up by the main microphones broadcast to millions. "A degenerative retinal disease. Progressive, irreversible. I started losing my sight at 15. Now, at 24, I am legally blind." The stadium erupted in murmurs. Cameras scrambled to capture reactions. The American broadcast booth fell momentarily into absolute silence before Michael found his words. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we are hearing for the first time, officially, confirmation that Beatrice Miller is competing in the Olympics while being legally blind. ... Patricia Moore." The former swimmer had tears in her eyes. This is extraordinary. High-performance swimming depends crucially on vision. For turns, for judging the distance to the wall, for staying straight in the lane. And doing this while blind is ... double quotes, "impossible," Michael completed. "It should be impossible." Dominique was frantically checking papers on her clipboard. Technically, Beatrice had all the necessary documentation. The Olympic Committee had approved her participation. There was no explicit rule against competing with a visual impairment, provided the athlete didn't use equipment that gave an unfair advantage. And non-hydrodynamic sunglasses certainly provided no advantage. Quite the opposite. "Very well," Dominique finally said. "You are authorized to compete, but you understand we cannot make special accommodations? No extra signals? No guidance help beyond the regulated tap on the back for turns?" "I understand," Beatrice replied. "I am not asking for accommodations. I am only asking for a chance to compete." The other 7 swimmers in the adjacent lanes watched this exchange with varied reactions. Some seemed genuinely impressed. Others were visibly skeptical. One, the American Jennifer Walsh, the current world champion, rolled her eyes in a way the cameras captured perfectly. Beatrice walked to her starting block. Each step was measured, calculated. David had told her 1,000 times, count your steps. Always the same number of steps. Create patterns your body knows even when your eyes fail. She climbed onto the block. The stadium lights reflected off the pool water, creating patterns of glare that even she, with her minimal vision, could vaguely perceive. But what she could not see were the lane lines. She could not see the pool wall 50 meters ahead. She could not see the markers on the bottom of the pool that normal swimmers use for guidance. All she could see were shadows, light, and darkness. And even that, barely. The starter raised the electronic beeper. Swimmers, take your marks. Beatrice assumed the position. Toes gripping the edge of the block, body leaning forward. Muscles tense like springs about to be released. The silence in the stadium was absolute. 15,000 people collectively holding their breath, and then the signal, beep. 8 bodies dove simultaneously. The water exploded in white foam as they entered. Beatrice felt the familiar impact of the water. Perfect temperature, exactly 77 degrees Fahrenheit as regulations required. She knew this not because she saw a thermometer, but because her body knew. Years of training had created muscle memory so deep she didn't need eyes. She executed the underwater dive, legs kicking in a dolphin motion, body undulating. She counted mentally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meters. 10 meters. 15 meters. At 15 meters, regulations required her to surface. She broke the surface and began the crawl, arms spinning at a rhythm she had practiced a million times. A 3-stroke breathing pattern, stroke, 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 breathe, stroke, 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 breathe. But there was a problem. Without a clear view of the black line on the bottom of the pool that swimmers use to maintain direction, Beatrice was drifting. Not much, but noticeably. Her trajectory wasn't perfectly straight. David saw it from the stands, his hands gripping his knees so hard his nails left marks. Come on, B, he whispered. You know where you are. You feel the water. Helen was crying openly now. Ryan was leaning so far forward he seemed about to jump into the pool. At 25 meters, Beatrice adjusted. She felt a difference in the water's turbulence when she got too close to the lane rope. The water had a different texture. She corrected her course slightly, but those micro-adjustments cost her. Every correction was energy spent. Energy that other swimmers didn't need to spend because they could see where they were going. 50 meters. The first turn. This was the critical moment. The underwater turn was where speed was gained or lost, and it required perfect timing, knowing exactly when to start the flip to avoid hitting the wall or turning too early. Normal swimmers saw the T-line on the bottom of the pool that indicated 5 meters to the wall. Beatrice saw nothing. She counted strokes. In the Olympic 50-meter pool, she needed exactly 42 strokes to reach the wall. 40, 41, 42. She touched the wall with an outstretched hand, executed the flip turn, and pushed off with her legs against the wall. It was perfect. Technically perfect. The crowd roared, because that was humanly impossible. Making a perfect turn while blind was like, there was no comparison. It was something that should not be possible. Michael Roberts was shouting in the booth, a perfect turn. Ladies and gentlemen, Beatrice Miller has just executed a perfect turn without being able to see the wall. How is this possible? Patricia responded with a choked voice, years of training, Michael. Years of exact memorization of every stroke, every count. She has turned her body into a computer. But look, she's in 5th place. The lack of vision is costing her speed. It was true. Beatrice was behind. Not terribly behind, but noticeably. Jennifer Walsh, the American, led by a full body length, second 50-meter length, 100 meters completed, 300 to go. Beatrice's arms burned, not from fatigue yet, it was too early for that, but from tension. She was swimming too tense. You need to relax, she thought. But how do you relax when every centimeter matters and you can't see where you're going? She vaguely heard the crowd shouting, muffled sounds from the water in her ears and her absolute concentration, but she knew they were shouting. She knew millions were watching, and she knew why. Because 3 months ago, no one in the world of swimming knew Beatrice Miller was going blind. She had hidden it for 9 years. From 15 to 24, she had hidden her progressive disability while competing at higher and higher levels. She won medals at the Pan American Games, broke American records, qualified for the Olympics, all while her vision gradually disappeared, and no one knew, not her team, not her competitors, not the federation, until 3 months ago when it all came out in the worst possible way. Flashback 3 months earlier, the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs was unusually quiet for a Friday afternoon. It would normally be full of athletes enjoying the last hours before the weekend, but that day only Beatrice was in the pool. She had specifically requested private time to train. David was sitting on the pool deck with a stopwatch, watching her complete a set of 200 meters. He meticulously noted the times, as he always did, but he was worried. Beatrice had been strange for weeks, more withdrawn, more anxious, and her times were inconsistent in ways that made no sense. One day she swam like a world champion. The next, it was as if she had forgotten basic technique. She completed another set and emerged at the edge near him, panting. 2 minutes and 3 seconds, David announced. 3 seconds slower than your average. B, what's going on? Beatrice took off her swim goggles. Her eyes, dark brown, always so expressive, seemed distant. I'm tired, she said simply. Nonsense, David replied, but gently. I've known you since you were 15. I know when you're tired and I know when you're lying. This is lying. Beatrice was silent for a long moment. Then, without a word, she got out of the pool and walked toward the locker rooms. David followed her, his worry growing. B, wait, talk to me. What's happening? She stopped, her back to him. Her shoulders trembled slightly. David, she said, her voice barely audible, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. He waited, his heart racing with a premonition. Beatrice turned around, and he saw tears streaming down her face. I'm going blind, she whispered. Actually, I'm almost completely blind already. The world seemed to stop. David was sure he had misheard. What did you say? Retinitis pigmentosa, Beatrice explained, her voice breaking. A degenerative disease. I started losing peripheral vision at 15. I thought it was normal, just fatigue. But it got worse. Gradually, year after year. She wiped her tears brutally with the back of her hand. I went to doctors in secret. I had all the tests. There is no cure. There is no treatment that significantly slows it down. It's progressive. It's irreversible. And now I can only see straight ahead, and even that is blurry. My peripheral vision is 0. At night, I see nothing. In dark environments, I'm completely blind. David was in shock. Processing those words seemed impossible. 9 years, he finally managed to say, You've been competing at a high level for 9 years knowing you were going blind? Not knowing, Beatrice corrected bitterly. Denying, hiding, lying to everyone, including myself. David sat down heavily on a bench. His mind raced through years of training, competitions, strange moments that now made sense. The times you hit the lane rope, he said slowly. The times your turn was perfect and other times terribly wrong. The way you always asked to swim in lane 4, the middle one, where the light is better. The way you memorized the exact number of strokes for each distance, ... all compensation strategies, Beatrice confirmed. Ways to hide what was happening. David looked perhaps for the first time in months, and he saw the signs he had missed. The way she sometimes tilted her head strangely. How her hands slightly groped the air when moving through unfamiliar places. How she always wore sunglasses indoors, saying she had light sensitivity. It wasn't sensitivity. It was protection for the few threads of vision she had left. B, he said gently, why didn't you tell me? We could have helped. We could have adapted the training and turned me into a charity case. She interrupted him, sudden anger flashing. Turned me into the courageous swimmer with a disability? Taking me out of serious competition because it's not safe? Forced me to retire at 24 when I'm still good enough to compete? David had no answer, because she was right. If the Federation had known, they probably would have prevented her from competing. The Olympics are in 3 months, Beatrice said, her voice calmer now but still intense. I've worked my whole life for this, and I'm not giving up. Not now, not when I'm so close, but I'm going to compete, she interrupted him with absolute finality. With or without your support. With or without the Federation's support. I'm going to Paris. I'm going to swim. And I'm going to prove that I'm still good enough. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Finally, David spoke. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. No more lies. No more hiding. You will formalize your medical condition with the Olympic Committee. You will request official permission to compete. And we will adapt your training to maximize your chances. Beatrice looked at him with gratitude mixed with surprise. You ... You're going to help me? Of course I am, David replied. You're the best swimmer I've ever trained. And if you say you can do this, I believe you. But we're going to do it the right way. She hugged him, crying with relief. But then David remembered something. Wait, you said you worked your whole life for this. But there was another reason. There always was. Ryan, hearing that name, Beatrice's body stiffened. Ryan Cooper, the man who was sitting in the stands in Paris. The man who looked at Beatrice as if she were his entire world. And the man who did not yet know the whole truth. Back to the competition, Beatrice was on her 3rd turn now. 150 meters completed, 250 to go. She was in fourth place. Jennifer Walsh still led, but the distance was decreasing, because Beatrice was no longer swimming tense. She was getting into her rhythm, finding that zone where the body operates on autopilot and the mind can rest. In the broadcast booth, Michael was narrating frantically, "And Beatrice is gaining ground. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. She is actually competing. This isn't just symbolic participation, she is fighting for a medal." Patricia added, "It's extraordinary, Michael. Her split times for 50 meters are getting consistently faster. She is doing what we call a negative split, the second half faster than the first. That requires immense control." In the stands, Ryan was on his feet now, unable to sit. His fists were clenched, every muscle in his body tense as if he himself were swimming. Helen was holding David's hand so tightly he was sure it would bruise, but he didn't care. He just watched his athlete, his student, do the impossible. Fourth turn. 200 meters completed. Half the race. And something extraordinary was happening. Beatrice was in second place now. She had overtaken 3 swimmers, and she was gaining on Jennifer Walsh. The entire stadium was on its feet. The roar was deafening. USA, USA, USA. But Beatrice didn't hear. She was completely in the zone. She wasn't thinking. She was just swimming. Stroke, stroke, breathe, stroke, stroke, breathe. Her body knew exactly what to do. Years, decades of training had carved muscle memory so deep that vision was almost irrelevant. Almost. Fifth turn. 250 meters. 150 to go. And Beatrice made a mistake. She miscalculated the distance to the wall. Just by centimeters. But it was enough. Instead of touching with an outstretched hand at the perfect moment, she had to add an extra half stroke. She lost momentum, lost time, fell to third place. David was shouting from the stands, but she couldn't hear him. "Come on, B, you can still do this." If this story's moving you, leave your like now and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the final part of this incredible story. Sixth turn, 300 meters, 100 to go. Beatrice was struggling now, her arms burned with lactic acid. Her legs felt like lead, and worse, her stroke count was confused. The mistake on the last turn had disrupted her mental cadence. But then she remembered why she was doing this. It wasn't just for the Olympics. It wasn't just to prove she could. It was for Ryan. It had always been for Ryan. Flashback. 10 years ago, Beatrice was 14 when she met Ryan for the first time. He was 16 and also a swimmer, but specialized in butterfly instead of freestyle. They trained at the same club in Colorado Springs, but they hadn't interacted much. He was on the boys' team. She was on the girls' team. They saw each other, waved politely, nothing more. Until the day everything changed. It was late at night. Beatrice had finished training hours ago, but had returned to the pool. She was having one of the worst days of her life. She had just discovered her diagnosis of retinitis pigmentosa. The ophthalmologist had been brutal in his honesty. "You will go blind. If there is no cure, there is no effective treatment. It's a matter of time." She had sat on the edge of the empty pool, crying. Her whole life was swimming, and now the doctor was telling her she had to give up, that she couldn't keep competing because her vision would disappear. That's when Ryan appeared. He had come to get something he forgot in the locker room and saw Beatrice crying. "Hey," he said gently, sitting down next to her. "Are you okay?" She tried to wipe her tears and pretend she was fine, but he wasn't buying it. "Want to talk about it?" he offered. And for a reason she couldn't explain, Beatrice told him everything, the diagnosis, the prognosis, the fear, the anger. Ryan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "You know what I think? I think you should swim even more. Swim while you can. Swim faster, farther, better than ever. Because if you're going to lose your sight anyway, why not create visual memories so intense they last forever?" Beatrice looked at him, surprised. It wasn't medical advice. It wasn't practical. It was ... It was perfect. "And more," Ryan continued, smiling now. "I'm going to help you. We'll train together. And when you can no longer see the pool lines, I'll be your eyes." That night, something blossomed between them. Not just friendship, something deeper. In the following years, Ryan kept his promise. They trained together whenever possible. When Beatrice's peripheral vision began to fail, he swam beside her, shouting instructions. "You're drifting to the left. Turn in 3 strokes." He became not only her best friend, but her guardian angel, her guide, and eventually her love. They never made it official, never called it dating. But Ryan didn't date anyone else, and neither did she. There was an unspoken understanding between them. And then 2 years ago, something happened that changed everything. Ryan was competing in the U.S. National Championships, 200-meter butterfly event. He was winning, far ahead. But on the last turn, something went wrong. No one saw exactly what. Maybe he had turned too fast. Maybe he had pushed off at the wrong angle. He hit his head against the pool edge, hard. He was carried out unconscious. Diagnosis: severe traumatic brain injury. Emergency surgery to relieve brain swelling. He survived, but there were complications. Brain damage resulted in partial loss of motor coordination. His left leg didn't respond properly. His left arm had a persistent tremor. End of his swimming career. End of his Olympic dreams. Beatrice stayed with him throughout his rehabilitation. Months of physical therapy. Months of frustration, as Ryan struggled to relearn how to walk normally. And it was during those months that Beatrice made a promise. A promise she never said out loud but carried in her heart. She would swim for both of them. She would reach the Olympics for both of them. She would prove that tragedies don't have to define destinies. And when she won, when not if, she would dedicate the victory to him, to the man who had been her eyes when hers failed. Back to the competition. Seventh turn, 350 meters. 50 meters to go. Beatrice was in third place, but the distance to second was small. And more importantly, she had reserved energy. Because while the other swimmers used everything in the first 300 meters, David had taught Beatrice a different strategy. Conserve, save energy. Because without perfect vision, she couldn't rely on a blind final sprint. But now in that moment, she had a sudden clarity. She didn't need to see. Her body knew exactly where it was. 42 strokes to the wall. She had just made the turn. 42 strokes to the medal, to victory, to fulfilling her promise. She accelerated. Her arms spun faster. Her legs kicked with a strength that seemed impossible after 350 meters of swimming. The entire stadium was screaming. The sound was physical, vibrating the air. She overtook the swimmer in second place, a Frenchwoman named Amélie Dubois. Now it was just her and Jennifer Walsh. The American still led, but the distance was closing. 20 meters to the wall. 15. 10. Go. Ryan shouted from the stands, tears streaming down his face. Helen was hyperventilating. David was hitting the railing so hard his hands turned red. 5 meters. Beatrice and Jennifer were side by side now, head to head. Impossible to tell who was in front. Beatrice made her final count. 40, 41, 42. She stretched out her arm, touched the wall, and the electronic scoreboard exploded with lights. First, Beatrice Miller, USA. 4 minutes, 3 seconds, and 21 milliseconds. New Olympic record second. Jennifer Walsh, USA. 4:03, 23:3. RD. Amélie Dubois Fra. 4 minutes, 3 seconds, and 89 milliseconds. Beatrice had won. By 200ths of a second. 200ths. And she had broken the Olympic record in the process. The stadium exploded. There was no other word to describe it. 15,000 people, screaming, crying, jumping. In the stands, Ryan was sobbing. Helen had fainted in David's arms, overcome with emotion. And in the pool, Beatrice emerged, taking off her sunglasses because she didn't need them at that moment. She looked at the scoreboard, but she couldn't see the numbers. All she saw were blurry lights. Jennifer Walsh swam over to her, hugging her. "You won," she said, her voice choked. "My God, you really won?" Beatrice began to cry. Not sad tears, but tears of absolute relief, of vindication, of love. She looked toward the stands, searching for Ryan, even without being able to see him clearly. But she didn't need to. She knew he was there. And she made a gesture, pointed to her heart, then pointed to where she knew he was sitting. Ryan understood. He always understood. That victory wasn't just hers, it was theirs. The press area after the race looked like a controlled battlefield. Dozens of journalists from all over the world jostled each other, microphones extended, cameras flashing lights that Beatrice could only perceive as explosions of white light. She was sitting on a raised chair, still in her competition swimsuit, covered by a Team USA warm-up jacket. Her sunglasses were back on, protecting the last threads of her vision from the intense lights. David was by her side, a protective hand on her shoulder. Helen was backstage, still recovering from the emotional shock, and Ryan ... Ryan hadn't been able to get authorization to enter the press area, but Beatrice knew he was on the other side of those doors, waiting. And the first question came from a British journalist. "Miss Miller, you just broke the Olympic record in the 400-meter freestyle while being legally blind. How is that possible?" Beatrice took a deep breath before answering. 9 years of practice, 9 years learning to compensate. My body memorized every stroke, every turn, every distance. I don't swim with my eyes. I swim with my heart. An American journalist raised her hand. "But you hid your condition for almost a decade. Why? And how did you manage to fool doctors, coaches, competitors?" The word fool made Beatrice flinch. "I didn't fool anyone," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "I compensated. I adapted. I worked twice as hard as any other athlete because I had to be twice as good just to compete at the same level. And I hid because I knew that if I revealed it, they would stop me from doing what I love. David leaned into the microphone. With the athlete's permission, I'd like to add something. Since Beatrice told me about her condition 3 months ago, we have worked with sports ophthalmologists, visual impairment specialists, and the International Olympic Committee itself. Everything was done within the rules. She had no unfair advantage. Quite the contrary, she swam with a significant disadvantage. And she still won. A French journalist asked, "Miss Miller, there are rumors that you did this for someone, or a man in the audience. Can you confirm?" Beatrice felt her cheeks blush. "Next question, please." But the journalist insisted. "Ryan Cooper, former American swimmer whose career ended in an accident 2 years ago. Sources say you are very close. Is he the motivation behind?" "Next question," David interrupted firmly. "The athlete's personal life is not relevant to this discussion." But Beatrice placed her hand over David's, gently silencing him. She looked in the general direction of where the journalist's voice had come from, even without being able to see him clearly. Ryan is the reason I'm here," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But not in the way you think. He didn't force me to do anything. He didn't pressure me. He simply believed. When I received my diagnosis at 15, when doctors told me to give up swimming, Ryan told me to swim stronger, to create memories while I still could." She paused, wiping away tears that began to fall. "And when he lost his own ability to swim, when his Olympic dream was taken from him, I made a promise. I promised that I would swim for both of us, that I would get here, that I would prove that tragedies don't define who we are." The silence in the press room was absolute. Several journalists had tears in their eyes. An American journalist, her voice choked, asked, "And now? What comes next? Will you continue competing?" Beatrice smiled sadly. "I don't know. My vision is worsening faster now. Stress accelerates the degeneration. Maybe this was my last race. Maybe not. But if it was ... what an ending, right?" The press conference continued for another 20 minutes, but David eventually ended it, saying Beatrice needed to rest. When they left the press room, Ryan was waiting on the other side of the doors. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. Beatrice ran into them, hugging him with a strength that seemed to want to merge their bodies into one. "You did it," Ryan whispered in her ear. "You really did it. We did it," she corrected. "It was always us." They stayed like that for a long time, oblivious to the cameras that were still filming, oblivious to the onlookers watching. They only existed in that moment. But then a voice interrupted them. "Miss Miller?" Kiris pulled away from Ryan, turning toward the voice. It was a woman, by the accent, American. "I'm Dr. Catherine Reynolds," the woman introduced herself. "I'm an ophthalmologist and researcher specializing in retinitis pigmentosa. I work at the National Institute of Eye Health in Maryland. May I speak with you in private?" Beatrice hesitated, but David nodded encouragingly. "Go. Ryan and I will wait here." 5 minutes later, Beatrice and Dr. Reynolds were in a private meeting room. The doctor was direct. "Miss Miller, I've followed your career for years. I didn't know about your condition until today, but in retrospect I could see the signs. The way you adapted is extraordinary, but I need to be honest. You are at an advanced stage. Very advanced." Beatrice already knew this. "How long do I have? Until I'm completely blind. It's impossible to say for sure. It could be months, it could be years. But based on the progression I've observed in similar patients, I'd say no more than 2 years before you lose your central vision as well." Beatrice absorbed that. 2 years of seeing faces, colors, light. But Dr. Reynolds continued, "There is something you should know. There is an experimental treatment, gene therapy. Still in clinical trials, but the initial results are promising. It doesn't restore lost vision, but it can significantly slow or even stop further progression." Beatrice's heart raced. "Are you serious?" "Completely. But there are conditions. The treatment is intensive. It requires at least 6 months of total commitment, frequent trips to Maryland. And ... double quotes, she hesitated. "There are no guarantees. It could work wonderfully. It could do nothing. It could even worsen the condition in some rare cases." "And swimming?" Beatrice asked. "Could I continue competing?" Dr. Reynolds shook her head. "During the treatment? No. You would need complete visual rest. No exposure to intense lights, extreme stress, or activities that raise intraocular pressure. High-performance swimming would do all of those things." Beatrice felt her stomach tighten. So the choice was, continue swimming while she could, knowing she would go completely blind in at most 2 years. Or stop now, do the treatment, and maybe, just maybe, preserve some vision for longer. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked. "Ideally, we would start immediately. The more advanced the degeneration, the less effective the treatment. But I understand you need time to process." "Okay, I'll give you a week." When Beatrice left the meeting, her face must have been pale because Ryan immediately asked what had happened. She told him everything. The experimental treatment, the conditions, the impossible choice. Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. You should do the treatment. What? He interrupted her, holding her hands. You've already proven everything you needed to prove. You won Olympic gold, you broke records, you inspired millions. And more importantly, you kept your promise to me, a promise I never asked you to make. His voice became intense. But now it's time to think of yourself, of your future, the possibility of seeing for longer, of seeing our children if we have them, of seeing the world. Don't throw that away for a few more races. Beatrice was crying now. But swimming is all I am. No, Ryan said firmly. Swimming is what you do. It's not who you are. You are so much more than that. David, who had overheard the conversation, added his opinion. Ryan is right, B. You've already made your point. And honestly, if your times are affected by the disease's progression, competing could become dangerous. What happens if you lose orientation completely in the middle of a race? If you hit the wall at full speed because you can't see? Beatrice knew they were right. Logically, she knew. But emotionally, can I think about it, she asked. I just need time, they agreed. In the following days, Beatrice became a global sensation. Her story was in every newspaper, every news site, every television program. The blind swimmer who conquered gold was the most common headline. Thousands of messages arrived, from people with disabilities who felt inspired, from athletes thanking her for showing that limitations could be overcome, from parents of children with retinitis pigmentosa saying Beatrice had given them hope. But there was also criticism. Some argued that she had put other swimmers at risk by competing without full vision. Others said she should have revealed her condition earlier, that she had hidden relevant information. One criticism in particular stung. It came from Jennifer Walsh, the American who had come in second. In an interview with an American network, Jennifer said, I respect what Beatrice did. I really do. But I wonder if it was fair. If she had revealed her condition before, maybe other swimmers would have prepared differently. Maybe I would have swum differently if I knew I was competing against someone with a disability. When Beatrice saw that interview, something broke inside her. Different how? She asked the TV screen in her room at the Olympic Village. Would you have swum slower out of pity? Would you have assumed an easy victory? That's exactly why I hid. Ryan, who was with her, hugged her. Ignore her. She's upset about losing. She's looking for excuses. But Beatrice couldn't ignore it, because there was truth there. She had hidden information. Maybe it didn't technically break rules, but there was an ethical gray area. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed looking at the ceiling, or where she knew the ceiling was, since she couldn't really see it in the dark, thinking about everything, and she made a decision. The next morning, she called her own press conference. Not an official one, just a post on her social media that she knew would be seen by millions. She sat in front of the camera on Ryan's phone and began to speak. My name is Beatrice Miller. 3 days ago, I won an Olympic gold medal in the 400-meter freestyle while being legally blind. And there are things I need to say. She took a deep breath. First, to the people who say I hid my condition unfairly, you are right. I should have been more transparent, but I was afraid. Afraid of being prevented from competing. Afraid of being treated differently. Afraid of losing the only thing that defined me. Second, to Jennifer Walsh and any other competitor who felt it was unfair, I am sorry. I am sincerely sorry. It was not my intention to put anyone at a disadvantage. But you need to understand, I swim with a significant disadvantage. Every race is 1,000 times more difficult for me than for anyone with normal vision. So if there was any injustice, it was against me, not in my favor. Her voice gained strength. Third, to the people with disabilities who wrote to me, thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories, reminding me why I did this. It wasn't just for me. It was for all of us who are told we cannot, that we should not try, that we should accept limitations. And finally she paused, tears beginning to fall, to my parents, to David, and especially to Ryan. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself, for being my eyes when mine failed, for loving me not despite my disability but including it. She looked directly at the camera. I received an offer for an experimental treatment that could preserve my remaining vision, but it requires that I stop swimming. And after much thought, I have decided ... I have decided to accept the treatment. Ryan, who was filming, gasped. She hadn't told him she had made the decision. Paris 2024 was my last competition, Beatrice continued. Recha go out, right? Olympic record. Gold medal. I proved everything I needed to prove. Now it's time to focus on preserving what I can, on living life beyond the pool. She smiled through the tears. But to the young athletes with disabilities watching this, don't stop. Keep fighting. Keep swimming, running, jumping, competing. Because we are so much more than our limitations. And the world needs to see that. The video ended. Ryan stopped the recording and immediately hugged Beatrice. Are you sure? He asked. About the treatment? About stopping? Yes, she replied. And for the first time in months, she felt peace. I'm sure. The video went viral instantly. Within hours, it had 50 million views. Within a day, 100 million. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Jennifer Walsh even posted her own video apologizing, saying she had spoken out of frustration and that Beatrice completely deserved her victory. But the response that meant the most to Beatrice came from an unexpected source 3 days after her post. She received a visit from a 12-year-old girl named Laura. She also had retinitis pigmentosa, diagnosed at 8, and she was a swimmer. Laura had come to Paris with her parents specifically to meet Beatrice. When they entered the room in the Olympic Village where Beatrice was staying, the girl was crying, You saved me, Laura said, running to hug Beatrice. I was going to quit swimming. My parents wanted me to stop because it was too dangerous. But after seeing that it's possible, I'm not giving up. I'm going to continue. I'm going to be like you. Beatrice hugged the girl, crying too. No, she said gently. Don't be like me. Be better. Be yourself. And when you get to the Olympics, because you will get there, don't hide who you are. Be proudly you, disability and all. Laura's mother, also crying, thanked Beatrice repeatedly. You have no idea what you've done. Not just for Laura, but for so many children like her. You gave them hope. After they left, Beatrice turned to Ryan. It was worth it, she said. Everything, the pain, the fear, the hiding, the stress. It was worth it for that moment. Ryan agreed. And it will be worth even more for the moments to come, for the treatment, for potentially keeping your sight, for our life together. Beatrice blinked. Our life together? Ryan knelt. From his pocket, he pulled out a small box. Beatrice Miller, he said, his voice trembling. You are the bravest, most determined, most extraordinary person I have ever known. You have been my best friend, my inspiration, my love for 10 years. And I don't want to spend one more day without you being officially mine. He opened the box. Beatrice couldn't see the ring clearly, but she didn't need to. She could see the love on his face, in his voice. Will you marry me? Ryan asked. Yes, Beatrice answered immediately. 1,000 times yes. They kissed as David, who apparently was in the hallway waiting for that moment, came in applauding, followed by Helen, who was screaming with joy. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was the beginning of a new chapter. But as Beatrice would learn in the following weeks, happy endings were just the beginning of more difficult journeys. 2 weeks after the Olympics, Beatrice was in Maryland at the National Institute of Eye Health, about to begin her experimental treatment. Ryan was with her, as was Helen. David had returned to the U.S., but called daily. Dr. Reynolds explained the procedure. We will inject genetically modified viruses directly into your retinas. These viruses carry genes that your retinal cells need, but are not producing due to retinitis pigmentosa. She showed images that Beatrice couldn't see clearly. It's delicate. It's experimental. And as I said, there are risks. But if it works, it could stabilize your vision at the current level for years, perhaps decades. And if it doesn't work, Beatrice asked, then at least we tried, Dr. Reynolds replied honestly. But based on your tests, I think there's a good chance of success. The surgery was scheduled for 2 days later. Until then, Beatrice needed to undergo a series of preparatory exams. It was during one of these exams that something unexpected was discovered. The technician doing the ocular ultrasound stopped suddenly, frowning. He called Dr. Reynolds. They whispered to each other, looking at the screen that Beatrice couldn't see. What is it? Beatrice asked, her heart racing with fear. Something wrong? Dr. Reynolds turned to her with a strange expression. Not wrong exactly, but we found something. Something that wasn't in your previous exams. What? There is a mass in your right retina. Small, but definitely there. We need a biopsy to confirm, but it looks like, quotes, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It looks like ocular melanoma. Cancer. Beatrice's world stopped. Cancer. The word echoed in her mind like a funeral bell. Ryan was by her side instantly, holding her hand. Are you sure? He asked the doctor. Could it be a mistake? I can't be sure without a biopsy, doctor, Reynolds replied. But I have 40 years of experience, and I've seen hundreds of these. I recognize one when I see it. And if it is, Beatrice asked, her voice barely audible, if it is cancer, then we cannot do the gene therapy. We would need to treat the cancer first. And depending on the stage, the treatment could include radiation that would accelerate vision loss. Or in the worst case scenario, double quotes, she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew. In the worst case, it would have to remove the eye. The biopsy was performed the next day. The wait for the results was torture. Beatrice, Ryan, and Helen stayed in a hotel near the hospital. No one sleeping, no one eating much, just waiting. On the third day, Dr. Reynolds called. "Can you come to the hospital? I have the results." When they arrived at her office, there was another person present, an oncologist named Dr. Michael Chun. The expression on their faces said everything before any words were spoken. "It is melanoma," Dr. Reynolds confirmed. "Stage 2. Still localized. Hasn't metastasized. But it's growing." "What does that mean?" Helen asked, holding Beatrice's hand. Dr. Chun took over. "It means we have options. We can do targeted radiation brachytherapy. Small radioactive discs temporarily implanted near the tumor. High success rate for stage 2. But," Beatrice detected hesitation in his voice, "but the radiation will significantly accelerate the retinal degeneration you already have. Instead of 2 years until complete blindness, it would probably be 6 months. And the gene therapy would no longer be an option afterward." "What's the alternative?" Ryan asked. "Enucleation," Dr. Chun replied. "It's removal of the eye. Would guarantee the cancer doesn't spread. And your left eye wouldn't be affected. You would keep the vision you have in it, which is already limited but still functional." Beatrice felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Remove the eye, lose all vision in the right side. Be left with only the left eye that already barely functioned. "How long do I have to decide?" she asked, her voice surprisingly calm considering the internal turmoil. "Not long," Dr. Chun replied honestly. "The tumor is growing. I'd say a maximum of 2 weeks before we need to act one way or another that night." At the hotel, Beatrice sat on the balcony looking at the city lights that were just colored blurs to her. Ryan was inside, giving her space. Her mind went over everything. At 15, the retinitis pigmentosa diagnosis. 9 years of hiding, compensating, fighting. Olympic gold medal. World record. And now at 24, eye cancer. It was as if the universe was determined to take her sight in every way possible. She heard the balcony door open. Ryan came out, putting a blanket over her shoulders. "It's cold," he said, sitting next to her. They were silent for a long time. Then Beatrice spoke. "Remember when we were 15 and 16? You told me to swim stronger, to create memories while I could still see?" "I remember," Ryan replied. "You were right," Beatrice continued. "Those memories, they are all I'm going to have. Because no matter what I choose now, radiation or surgery, I will lose my sight. It's just a matter of when and how. So what are you going to do?" Ryan asked gently. Beatrice turned to him. She couldn't see his face clearly, but she knew every line, every expression. She had memorized them in the years when she could still see. "I'm going to have the eye removed," she said. "I'm going to have the surgery." Ryan began to protest, but she raised her hand, silencing him. "Listen, if I do radiation, I lose my sight in 6 months anyway. And during those 6 months, I live in fear of the cancer spreading, of it not working. But if I remove the eye now, I end the cancer definitively. And I still have my left eye. Maybe for another year or 2. Maybe longer if I'm lucky." She took his hands. "And in those years, I can do everything I still need to do while I can see. I can see you at the altar when we get married. I can see our children's faces when they're born. I can see the world a little more before everything goes dark." Ryan was crying now. "You are the strongest person I know." "I'm not strong," Beatrice said, also crying. "I'm terrified. But I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done, even when you're terrified." 2 days later, Beatrice was in the operating room. The anesthesia was beginning to take effect. Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Chun were prepared. The last thing Beatrice saw with her right eye before the anesthesia took her was Ryan's face through the operating room window. He had his hand over his heart, then pointed to her. "Our signals," she thought, smiling even as she lost consciousness. "Always our signal." The surgery lasted 3 hours. It was successful. The tumor was completely removed along with the eye. There were no signs of metastasis. When Beatrice woke up, there was a thick bandage over the right side of her face. Throbbing pain pulsed through the anesthesia, but she was alive and the cancer was gone. Helen was by the bed, holding her hand. "My brave girl," she whispered. "My strong girl." Ryan was on the other side. When Beatrice turned her head carefully, because every movement increased the pain, she saw him. She saw him with her left eye, her last window to the visual world. "Hi," she said, her voice hoarse from the intubation. "Hi," he replied, smiling through tears. "You look beautiful." She laughed, then groaned because laughing hurt. "Liar. I have half my face bandaged, and I probably look like a monster." "To me," Ryan said, kissing her forehead, "you are always the most beautiful person in the world." The recovery took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of pain, of adjustment to having vision on only one side, of dealing with the loss of depth perception. But Beatrice was a fighter. She always had been. She learned to compensate just as she had learned to compensate for retinitis pigmentar. And when they finally removed the bandages and placed the ocular prosthesis made to look identical to her real eye, she looked in the mirror. With her left eye, the only one that still saw, she could barely distinguish the difference. The prosthesis was perfect. No one will know, Dr. Reynolds said, unless you tell them. But Beatrice knew, and that was what mattered. Every time she looked in the mirror, she would see a reminder of what she had lost, of the price she had paid. A month after the surgery, Beatrice and Ryan returned to the U.S. There was a champion's welcome at the airport, hundreds of people shouting her name, holding up signs. "B, our heroine, you inspired U.S. Olympic gold, gold in our hearts." Beatrice wore sunglasses, as always. But now it wasn't just to protect her limited vision. It was also to hide the prosthesis. Not because she was ashamed, but because she wasn't ready for more media attention. In the following months, life began to normalize. Beatrice and Ryan began to plan their wedding. She gave motivational speeches, sharing her story. She worked with visual impairment organizations, helping others adapt. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't training. She wasn't in the pool 6 hours a day. Her entire identity for almost 2 decades had been swimmer. And now she was just Beatrice. It took time to adjust. There were days when she felt an immense emptiness. Days when she woke up at 5 in the morning out of habit, ready to train, before remembering she didn't train anymore. David visited frequently. He had taken on other athletes but kept in close contact. One day, 6 months after her surgery, he came with a proposal. "B," he said, sitting in the living room of the apartment she and Ryan now shared. "I have an offer for you. U.S. Swimming wants you to be a coach, specifically for swimmers with disabilities." Beatrice blinked. "A coach? You have unique experience," David explained. "You know what it's like to compete with a visual impairment. You know how to adapt, how to compensate. And after your story became public, hundreds of young people with visual impairments started swimming. They need someone who understands, someone who has lived it." The idea grew on Beatrice, a coach teaching others, passing her knowledge forward. "I would do that," she said slowly. "But David, my own vision is getting worse. Eventually, I won't be able to see well enough to observe technique, to give visual feedback. Then you'll adapt," David interrupted. "Just like you always have. You'll learn to coach through verbal descriptions, through tactile feedback. You'll pioneer a completely new method of training. Because that's what you do, B. You turn limitations into innovations." Beatrice accepted. 3 months later, she was on the edge of a pool in Colorado Springs, watching with her one functional I-8 children with various degrees of visual impairment. The oldest was 14. Her name was Anna. She had retinitis pigmentosa, just like Beatrice. The youngest was 8, blind from birth due to congenital glaucoma. Beatrice looked at those children and saw herself. She saw fear. She saw determination. She saw unlimited potential that the world would try to limit. "Well," she said, her voice echoing in the pool area, "my name is Beatrice Miller. I'm an Olympic gold medalist, and I am legally blind, just like you." The children looked at her with admiration mixed with skepticism. Anna raised her hand. "Miss Miller, is it true that you swam in the Olympics without being able to see?" "It's true," Beatrice confirmed, "and it's true that it was very, very difficult. But it's also true that it was possible, and if I did it, you can do it. Maybe not the Olympics, maybe yes, but you can do what you love. You can swim. You can compete. You can live completely." She spent the next 2 hours teaching them what it had taken her years to learn alone. How to count strokes. How to use water turbulence for orientation. How to memorize distances so perfectly that the body knew where it was even when the eyes didn't. And, for the first time since she stopped competing, Beatrice felt purpose. She felt she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That night, she told Ryan, "I think I finally understand something." "What?" he asked, hugging her on the couch. "My Olympic gold wasn't my greatest achievement," she said. "It was just the beginning. My true mission is this, helping other people like me see that limitations are just that, limitations, not definitions." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "You always knew that. You just needed time to realize it." Months turned into 1 year. Then 2. Beatrice's vision continued to worsen, but more slowly than doctors had predicted. Her left eye still functioned, albeit minimally. She could see shapes. She could distinguish light from darkness. On good days, she could even recognize faces if they were very close. And she coached. 8 children became 20. 20 became 50. Her program grew. And some of her athletes began to compete at the national level. Anna, the 14-year-old girl with retinitis pigmentosa, won a gold medal at the Junior National Championships 2 years after starting with Beatrice. When she stood on the podium, she pointed to her heart, then to where Beatrice was in the stands. "Our signal," Beatrice thought, crying with pride. "The legacy continues. 3 years after the Olympics, Beatrice and Ryan finally married. The ceremony was small, intimate, just family and close friends. Beatrice wore a simple white dress. She didn't wear sunglasses for the first time in years. She let everyone see her eyes. One real, though almost without sight. One prosthetic, perfect in appearance but empty in function. When Ryan waited at the altar and Beatrice walked toward him, guided lightly by Helen, she could barely see him. Just a tall silhouette. A form her heart knew better than her eyes ever had, but she didn't need to see. She knew every word of the vows he recited. She could hear the love in his voice. She could feel it in how his hands trembled slightly as they held hers. "Beatrice Miller," Ryan said when it was time for his personal vows, "you have been my best friend for 13 years. My love for 10. You taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue even when terrified. You taught me that limitations are just excuses if we allow them to be. And you taught me that true love doesn't need eyes to see." His voice broke. "So today I promise to be your eyes when you need them, your arms when you're tired, your strength when you feel weak, and your partner in everything forever." Beatrice could barely speak through the tears. But when her turn came, the words flowed. "Ryan Cooper, you saved me when I was 15 and thought my life was over. You told me to swim stronger, and I swam. You believed in me when no one else did. And when I lost my dreams, you lost yours to be by my side." She squeezed his hands. "Today I promise to love you not only with my heart, but with every part of me. I promise to see you, truly see you, even when my eyes cannot. Because love doesn't live in the eyes. It lives in the soul. And my soul recognized yours the moment we met, when the officiant said, 'You may kiss the bride.'" Their kiss was applauded by everyone present. David was shouting the loudest of all. The reception was joyful. But in the middle of the party, Beatrice needed a moment alone with Ryan. They went out to the garden of the venue. It was night, but there were decorative lights. Beatrice couldn't see the lights clearly, but she could feel their warm glow. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice tremulous. Ryan immediately became worried. "What is it? Has your vision gotten worse?" "No," Beatrice replied, smiling. "Well, yes, it's always getting worse. But that's not it. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Then Ryan let out a cry of joy, picking up Beatrice and spinning her around. "Really? We're having a baby?" "We're having a baby," Beatrice confirmed, laughing and crying simultaneously. Ryan put her down gently. Then his expression changed to concern. "But wait, your vision. The doctor said pregnancy can accelerate. It can accelerate the degeneration," Beatrice completed. "I know. Hormones and physical stress can make my vision worse faster. But Ryan, I don't care. This baby, our family, is more important than being able to see for a few more months." "Are you sure?" Ryan asked. "Because if you're not ready, we can wait. I'm 30 years old," Beatrice interrupted. "And if we wait, I might never see our child. But if we have one now, we'll see at least something. I'll see their newborn face. I'll see the first few months. And I'll memorize every detail for when I can no longer see." Ryan hugged her tightly. "Then let's have this baby. And I'll describe every moment you can't see. I'll be your eyes forever." The pregnancy was difficult. As the doctors predicted, the hormonal and physical stress accelerated Beatrice's retinal degeneration. By the 5th month of pregnancy, she could barely see shapes. By the 7th month, only light and darkness. By the 8th month, her sight was completely gone. Beatrice Miller, at 30 years old, was completely blind. The day she lost her sight completely, she was sitting at home. Ryan was at work. Helen was visiting. Beatrice realized something was different when she woke up. Normally, even with minimal vision, she could perceive sunlight coming through the bedroom window. Today, nothing. Just darkness. She closed her eyes, opened them again. Nothing changed. The darkness was absolute, total. "Mom," she called, her voice surprisingly calm. "Mom, my sight is gone." Helen came running into the room. "What? How do you know?" "'Cause I can't see anything at all," Beatrice replied. "Not light, not shadows. Nothing, it's just void." Helen began to cry, but Beatrice didn't cry. She'd been preparing for that moment for 15 years. She knew it would come. And now that it was here, she felt almost relief. No more gradual deterioration, no more every day a little worse. It was over. She had reached the final destination. "It's okay, Mom," Beatrice said, hugging Helen. "I knew this was going to happen, and I am at peace." When Ryan came home and found out, he couldn't maintain his composure like Beatrice. He cried bitterly, hugging her. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "I'm so sorry." "Why?" Beatrice asked, confused. "She didn't do this." "The disease did, but if we hadn't gotten pregnant, then I would have lost my sight in a year or two anyway," Beatrice interrupted. "And we wouldn't have our baby. Ryan, listen. I regret nothing. I saw enough. I memorized enough. And now I'm going to learn to live in a new way. She put his hands on her belly, where the baby was kicking. And when our child is born, I will get to know them in other ways. Through touch, through sound, through love. Sight is just one way of seeing. The only one. Ryan kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You are extraordinary, you know that? I'm not extraordinary, Beatrice replied. I'm just someone who refused to let limitations define me. And now I'm going to teach our child to do the same. 6 weeks later, on a rainy March dawn, Beatrice went into labor. Ryan drove her to the hospital, driving faster than he should, holding her hand whenever possible. The labor lasted 14 hours. It was painful, exhausting, frightening, but when they finally heard the cry, that first strong, indignant cry of new life, it was all worth it. It's a boy, the obstetrician announced. A healthy, perfect baby boy. They cleaned him, weighed him, measured him, then they placed him in Beatrice's arms. She couldn't see him, but she could feel his warm weight. She could feel his soft skin. She could hear his little sounds as he calmed against her chest. Yep. What does he look like? She asked Ryan, her voice choked with emotion. Ryan, crying openly, described every detail. He has your nose, my chin, black hair, a lot of it, eyes. He hasn't opened them completely yet, but they look brown. He has your hands, long fingers, perfect for swimming. Beatrice laughed through her tears. He doesn't have to be a swimmer. He can be whatever he wants. I know, Ryan said. But if he wants to swim, he'll have the best coach in the world. They named him Lucas Ryan Miller Cooper. The first months with Lucas were the most difficult and wonderful of Beatrice's life. Learning to care for a baby while being completely blind was an immense challenge, but she adapted. She always adapted. She organized Lucas's room with military precision. Every item had a specific place. Diaper is always in the same drawer. Clothes organized by type. Bottles in order. She learned to recognize each of Lucas's different cries. Hunger had a specific tone. A dirty diaper. Another. Tiredness. Another still. Her body learned his rhythms. When he woke up. When he slept. When he needed comfort. And Ryan described everything. He's smiling at you now, Bea. That big toothless smile. He loves you so much. Beatrice memorized every description, building a mental image of her son through Ryan's words. When Lucas was 6 months old, Beatrice returned to coaching her athletes. It was difficult at first managing a career in motherhood while blind, but she had an incredible support system. Helen helped with Lucas, Ryan had adjusted his own work to be more present, and Beatrice's own athletes helped her. Anna, now 17 and one of the country's most promising swimmers, had become almost a second coach. She saw what Beatrice couldn't, and translated it into words Beatrice understood. Maria's drifting to the left in lane 3, Anna would report. Lucy is kicking her legs too high, losing efficiency, and Beatrice, using only her voice and her memory of how each movement should feel, corrected her athletes. She developed a completely new training method based on detailed verbal description, tactile feedback, and a deep understanding of biomechanics that transcended sight. Other coaches began to study her methods. Academic articles were written about the Miller method of training without visual dependence, and her athletes thrived. 3 years after Beatrice lost her sight completely, 2 of her swimmers qualified for the Paralympic Games. Anna won bronze at the Junior World Championships. But the most significant moment came when Lucas was 3 years old. Beatrice was on the pool deck during morning training when she heard a small voice. Mommy? It was Lucas. Ryan had brought him to visit. Hi, sweetheart, Beatrice said, smiling in the direction of the voice. What are you doing here? I want to swim, Lucas said, like you, like the big girls. Beatrice felt her heart tighten. Part of her wanted Lucas to choose anything but swimming to avoid the pressure of being the son of an Olympic medalist. But another part, the part that loved swimming more than almost anything, was thrilled. You want to swim? She asked, kneeling to be at his height, or where she believed he was. She had learned to estimate heights by voice. Yes, Lucas replied enthusiastically. Will you teach me? Beatrice held out her arms and Lucas ran into them. She hugged him, feeling his small, perfect body. I'll teach you, she promised. But not because I want you to be like me, because you want to. Okay? Okay, Lucas agreed without really understanding the distinction. From that day on, Lucas spent hours in the pool, and Beatrice discovered something wonderful. Teaching her own son was completely different from teaching other athletes. She physically guided him through each movement, held his hands to show the correct arm angle, placed her hands on his shoulders to adjust his posture. She didn't need eyes for that. She only needed touch, connection, love. And Lucas, even at 3 years old, showed natural talent. Or maybe it wasn't talent, maybe it was just that he had grown up hearing water, hearing swimming instructions, absorbing the sport through osmosis. When Lucas was 5 years old, Beatrice received an unexpected invitation, U.S. swimming. wanted her to be an assistant coach for the national team at the next Olympics. Not of the main athletes, but of a special program they were starting, integrating athletes with disabilities into the regular training system. It was an immense honor, and also an immense challenge. I don't know if I can, Beatrice admitted to Ryan that night. International travel, managing a whole team, all of that while blind. It's too much. You already do impossible things every day, Ryan pointed out. This would just be one more. But Lucas, I'll take care of Lucas, Ryan interrupted, and he'll understand. He'll be proud to have a mom who is changing the sport. Beatrice accepted the position. For the next 3 years, she worked tirelessly. She developed training programs, mentored young coaches on how to work with athletes with disabilities, and slowly, methodically, she changed the culture of American swimming. When the Los Angeles Olympics arrived 8 years after her own gold in Paris, Beatrice was there, not as a competitor, but as a coach, and 2 of her athletes were competing. Anna, now 25, had qualified for the 400-meter freestyle, and a young blind swimmer named Sophia was competing in the 100-meter backstroke. The night of Anna's race, Beatrice was in the coach's area. She couldn't see the pool. She couldn't see Anna swimming, but she could hear the roar of the crowd. She could hear the splash of the water, and she could hear Ryan, who was in the stands, shouting through the phone he held to his ear. She's winning, B. Anna is in the lead. 50 meters to go, ... 40, ... 30, ... Beatrice was standing, hands clenched, body tense. 20 meters, she still leads. 10, ... go, Anna. Beatrice shouted, not caring that she was in a supposedly professional area. She won. Ryan was screaming on the phone. B, she won gold. Anna won Olympic gold. Beatrice let out a cry of joy so loud that everyone in the coaches area turned to look, but she didn't care. Anna had done it. Her athlete, her protege. The 14-year-old girl with retinitis pigmentosa who had shown up at her training 8 years ago was now an Olympic champion. Minutes later, Anna ran to the coaches area, still dripping from the pool. "Coach!" she shouted, hugging Beatrice with a strength that almost knocked him over. "You did it," Beatrice said, crying and laughing simultaneously. "You really did it." "No," Anna said, pulling back but holding Beatrice's arms. "We did it. You taught me everything. You showed me it was possible. This gold is as much yours as it is mine." When Anna stood on the podium, when the national anthem played, she did something that shocked everyone. After receiving the medal, she took it off her neck and stepped down from the podium. She walked directly to where Beatrice was in the coaches area, seeing nothing but hearing everything, and placed the medal around Beatrice's neck. "This is yours," Anna said loudly enough for the microphones to pick up. "Without you, I would never have gotten here. Thank you, Coach. Thank you for teaching me to see beyond blindness." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras captured the moment. And that night, the story of Beatrice and Anna was headline news on every sports channel in the world. From athlete to coach, the legacy of Beatrice Miller continues, but for Beatrice, the most significant moment came later. When she returned to the hotel, she found Lucas, now 8 years old, waiting with Ryan and Helen. "Mommy," Lucas said, running to it, "do you see Anna win?" The innocent question made all the adults fall silent. How to explain to an 8-year-old that his mother couldn't see anything? But Beatrice just knelt and hugged Lucas. "Not with my eyes," she said, "but with my heart. I saw through your father's words. I saw through the sound of the crowd. I saw through the feeling of pride that fills my chest. There are many ways to see, Lucas. Eyes are just one of them." Lucas thought about that for a moment. Then he said something profound for an 8-year-old. "Then you see better than most people, because you see with your heart." Beatrice hugged him tighter, crying. Her son understood. Despite his youth, he understood. 10 years after losing her sight completely, Beatrice was standing in a room full of reporters, but this time it wasn't a sports press conference. It was the launch of her book, Swimming in the Dark. Memories of Seeing Beyond Sight had become an instant bestseller. It was part autobiography, part manual on how to live fully with a disability, part love letter to swimming into life. Beatrice hadn't written the book alone. She had help from a ghostwriter who turned her spoken words into text. But every word, every story, every lesson was hers. The book covered everything. Her diagnosis at 15, years of hiding her condition, the Paris Olympics, the cancer, the complete blindness, motherhood, her career as a coach. But more than that, it was about resilience, about refusing to be defined by limitations, about finding new ways to live when old ways no longer work. "People always ask me," Beatrice said during the launch, "if I had a choice, if I would go back in time and change something. If I would choose not to have retinitis pigmentosa, not to have cancer, not to go blind." She paused, letting the question hang in the air. And my answer always surprises people. I say no, I wouldn't change a thing. Because every challenge, every loss, every moment of darkness transformed me into who I am. It taught me empathy. It taught me strength. It taught me that there are 1,000 ways to see the world and that physical sight is just one of them. The audience was in complete silence, capturing every word. My blindness is not a tragedy, Beatrice continued. It is simply my reality. And in that reality, I have found purpose, love, joy, and meaning. Not despite the blindness, but including it. It is part of who I am, and I am at peace with that. The book sold millions of copies. It was translated into 36 languages. Schools used it in curricula. Therapists recommended it to patients dealing with loss. And more importantly, it changed conversations about disability. People began to see disability not as a tragedy, but as a difference, as another way of experiencing the world. Lucas was 13 now, and he was a serious swimmer. Not because Beatrice pressured him, she never did, but because he genuinely loved this sport. He trained with Beatrice, of course, but also with other coaches. Beatrice insisted on that. She didn't want him to depend only on her. She wanted him to have multiple perspectives, varied methods. But the most special moments were when they trained alone, just mother and son in the pool. Beatrice swam less now. Her 40-year-old body didn't recover like it did at 20, but she still swam. She still loved the feeling of water, of movement, of freedom. And sometimes Lucas swam beside her, shouting instructions like Ryan had done so many years ago. Mom, you're drifting to the right. Turn in 4 strokes. You're amazing. Smiled at each instruction. The cycle continued. She had been guided by Ryan. Now she was guided by Lucas. Love through generations, expressed through water and words. When Lucas was 15, something extraordinary happened. He qualified for the Junior World Championships. It was a prestigious competition in Budapest. Lucas, specializing in the 200-meter individual medley, had made the qualifying times. Beatrice, of course, went as a coach, but also as a mother. The night of Lucas's final race, Beatrice was more nervous than she had been at her own Olympic race. She was in the coaches area, unable to see, just listening through headphones where Ryan in the stands narrated. He's in lane 5, Ryan was saying. He's focused. You can see it in his expressions. He inherited your determination, B. The signal sounded. The race began. Ryan narrated every second. Strong butterfly. He's in second place, turning to backstroke. He overtook into first. B, he's leading. Beatrice was standing, hands over her heart. Breaststroke now. He maintains the lead, last turn. 50 meters of freestyle to finish, go, Lucas. Beatrice was shouting, not caring that it wasn't professional protocol. He's flying, B. 20 meters, 15, 10, he touched. He won. Lucas won gold at the Junior World Championships. Beatrice screamed with joy, tears streaming. Her son, her boy. Minutes later, Lucas ran to her, still wet. But instead of hugging her immediately, he did something different. He took her hand and guided her to the edge of the pool. Mom, he said, there's something I want you to do. What? Beatrice asked, confused. Swim with me now. A victory lap. Together. Beatrice hesitated. She was in normal clothes. It wasn't appropriate. But when she felt, perceived through his touch the hope in Lucas, she couldn't refuse. She took off her shoes and jumped into the pool fully clothed. Lucas jumped in beside her, and then mother and son swam together. Not fast, not competitive, just shared movement through the water they both loved. The crowd that was still in the stadium began to applaud. Cameras captured the moment, and that image, Beatrice fully clothed, swimming beside her world champion son, became iconic because it represented something profound. Generations connected through sport, a blind mother teaching a son who could see, and a son honoring his mother in the only way that mattered, by continuing the legacy. Beatrice was 45 years old when she received the phone call that would change everything again. It was from Dr. Catherine Reynolds, the ophthalmologist who had treated her years before. They kept in sporadic contact, but this call was different, urgent. Beatrice, Dr. Reynolds said without preamble, I need you to come to Maryland immediately. There's something you need to see. Well, something you need to know about. What happened? Beatrice asked, her heart racing. Is it about my health? Not exactly. It's complicated. Please, just come. Bring Ryan. This will interest both of you. 3 days later, Beatrice and Ryan were in Dr. Reynolds' office. Lucas had stayed in the U.S. with Helen. He had an important competition approaching. The doctor wasn't alone. There was another person in the room, a young man, perhaps 30 years old, who introduced himself as Dr. James Kim, a neuroscientist specializing in brain-computer interfaces. Miss Miller, Dr. Kim began. What I'm about to propose will sound like science fiction, but I assure you it is real science. Very, very advanced science. Beatrice sat down, Ryan holding her hand, listening. For the last 10 years, Dr. Kim explained, my team has been developing a neural implant that allows blind people to see again. Not in the traditional way, not through the eyes, but through direct electrical signals to the visual cortex of the brain. Beatrice felt her heart race. Is that possible? Not only possible, but we've already tested it on 23 patients, Dr. Kim replied, with an 87% success rate. People don't regain perfect vision like they had before, but they can distinguish shapes, faces, movements. They can navigate environments. They can read. They can see the faces of their loved ones. The room spun around Beatrice. Ryan was squeezing her hand so hard it hurt. Why? Beatrice asked, her voice barely audible. Why are you telling me this now? Why not 10 years ago when I lost my sight? Because 10 years ago the technology was at a very early stage, Dr. Reynolds explained. The success rate was less than 50%. The risks were significant brain damage, seizures, even death. We couldn't in good conscience recommend it to you. But now, Dr. Kim continued, the technology has matured. It's safe. It's reliable. And you specifically would be an ideal candidate because your blindness is retinal, not cerebral. Your visual cortex is perfectly functional. It just isn't receiving input from the eyes. Our implant bypasses the eyes completely. Beatrice couldn't process it. After 15 years of accepting her blindness, making peace with it, building a complete life without sight, now they were telling her she could see again. And if it works, she asked carefully, what would it be like? Well, what I see, initially just basic shapes, Dr. Kim replied honestly, black and white, low resolution. But with training, the brain learns to process the signals better. Within 6 months, most patients can recognize faces, read large letters, see basic colors, but it will never be perfect vision, Dr. Reynolds added. It won't be like before you went blind. It will be different, a new kind of sight. Ryan was crying now. You could see Lucas. You could see how he's grown. You could see our home, but Beatrice was strangely calm. And the risks? Are there still risks? Brain surgery always has risks, Dr. Kim admitted. Infection, bleeding, rejection of the implant. But our rate of serious complications is less than 3%, and no deaths in our last 50 procedures. How long do I have to decide? Beatrice asked. The implant would be ideal to place within the next 6 months, Dr. Reynolds replied. After that, you start losing neural plasticity. The brain forgets how to process visual information. The sooner the better. Beatrice asked for time to think. They agreed, giving her a week. That night at the hotel, Beatrice and Ryan talked for hours. Do you want to do this? Ryan asked. Because if you do, I'll support you 100%. But it's also okay if you don't want to. You've built an incredible life without sight. Beatrice was sitting on the balcony, feeling the night breeze on her face. I don't know what I want, she admitted. Part of me is excited. To see Lucas, to see you, to see the world again, even if it's different. But another part, what? Ryan pressed gently. Another part is afraid, Beatrice confessed. I've built an entire identity around being blind. The blind swimmer, the blind coach, the blind mother who overcame everything. If I can see again, even partially, who am I? Ryan sat beside her, taking her hands. You are Beatrice, with or without sight. That doesn't change who you are at your core. But it changes how the world sees me, Beatrice argued. My whole story is about overcoming blindness, about proving that disability doesn't define suddenly I'm no longer blind, ... You still lived 15 years blind, Ryan pointed out. That doesn't disappear. And I think maybe your new story is even more powerful, about how technology can transform lives, about second chances, about never stopping evolving. Beatrice spent 2 days thinking. She talked to David, to Helen, to her athletes. She even called Anna, who is now a coach too. Anna's response surprised her. Coach, I'll be honest, a selfish part of me doesn't want you to do this because you are my inspiration exactly as you are. You proved to me that blindness is not a limitation, but the part that loves you wants you to have this chance because you deserve to see. You deserve to have that choice. On the 3rd day, Beatrice called Lucas. Lucas said when she told him about the implant, You could see me swim. You could, Lucas. Beatrice interrupted him gently. I need to ask you something. Honestly, if I don't do this, if I choose to remain blind, would that change how you see me? Would you be disappointed? The silence on the line lasted long seconds. Then Lucas replied, his voice full of emotion. Mom, when I was 8 years old and you taught me to swim for the first time, I realized something. You didn't need eyes to be amazing. You felt the water in ways no one else did. You understood movement so deeply that sight would almost be a distraction. He paused. So no, I wouldn't be disappointed if you didn't do it, because you're already perfect as you are. But I also wouldn't be disappointed if you did, because whatever your choice, you're still my mom, my hero, the strongest person I know. Beatrice was crying openly now. When did you get so wise? Lucas laughed. I learned from the best. That night, Beatrice made her decision. She called Dr. Reynolds. I'll do it, she said. I'll get the implant. 6 weeks later, Beatrice was on the operating table. The surgery would take 8 hours. It was complex, delicate, risky. Ryan was in the waiting room, unable to stay still. Helen had come from the U.S. Lucas had asked to come, but Beatrice insisted he stay. He had an important competition, and she didn't want him to miss it because of her. David was there, too, having flown from Colorado Springs. Surprisingly, Anna and 2 of her other athletes had come to show support. The 8 hours felt like 80. But finally, Dr. Kim emerged from the operating room, still wearing blue scrubs, his mask lowered. The surgery was perfect, he announced, smiling. The implant is in place, all vital signs stable. Now it's a matter of waiting for her to wake up and starting the activation process. Beatrice woke up 6 hours later. Her head was bandaged. Pain throbbed through her skull despite the powerful painkillers, but she was alive. And the surgery had been successful. How do you feel? Ryan asked, holding her hand. Like I've been run over by a truck, Beatrice replied, trying to smile. But good, I think. The implant is working, Dr. Reynolds explained, but we haven't activated it yet. We need to wait 2 weeks for the brain swelling to go down. Then we'll do the first activation. Those 2 weeks were torture. Beatrice was so close to potentially seeing again, but she had to wait. She had to let her brain heal. Lucas called every day. Just a few more days, Mom. Then you'll see me for the first time since I was 3 years old. Finally, the day arrived. Beatrice was sitting in a special room at the Institute, surrounded by medical equipment. Dr. Kim was at the computer that would control the implant. Dr. Reynolds monitored her vital signs. Ryan held her hand. Ready? Dr. Kim asked. Beatrice took a deep breath. Ready. Okay. I'm activating the implant at a very low level. You may not see anything immediately, or you may see bursts of light, or strange shapes. Everything is normal. Don't be alarmed. He typed commands into the computer, and suddenly, Beatrice gasped. It wasn't complete darkness anymore. There was ... something. It wasn't sight as she remembered it. It was more like patterns of light and shadow, undefined shapes, blurs of different shades of gray. I see something, she whispered, hardly believing it. It's not clear, but I see ... something. The room erupted in restrained applause. Ryan was crying. Helen was too. It's normal for it to be undefined at first, Dr. Kim explained, gradually increasing the input. Your brain needs to relearn how to process visual information. It will improve. And it did. Over the next few hours, as Dr. Kim carefully adjusted the implant, Beatrice's vision became progressively clearer. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't like her memories of sight before blindness. It was ... different, like seeing the world through a low-resolution camera. Black, white, shades of gray, no fine details, but it was sight. I want to try something, Beatrice said after 2 hours of calibration. Ryan, can you stand in front of me? Ryan moved, positioning himself directly in front of her. Beatrice looked, and for the first time in 15 years, she saw her husband's face. Not perfectly, not with the vivid colors and sharp details of her memories, but she saw the shape of his face, the shadow of his eyes, the outline of his smile. You're bald, she said, starting to laugh through her tears. Ryan laughed too, running his hand over his head, which was indeed losing hair. Yes, well, 15 years does that to a man. Beatrice kept looking, memorizing every contour, every shadow. You're beautiful, she said. You always were. And you still are. In the following days, Beatrice's vision gradually improved. Her brain was relearning. The shapes became more defined, the contrasts clearer. 1 week after activation, colors began to appear. First, just basic tones, red versus blue, then more nuances. 2 weeks after activation, Beatrice was walking the halls of the Institute without assistance. She could see enough to navigate, avoid obstacles, recognize people up close. It wasn't perfect sight. It never would be. But it was miraculous considering she'd have been completely blind for 15 years. The moment Beatrice most awaited was when she finally returned to the U.S. and saw Lucas. He was waiting at the airport. Beatrice saw him from afar, a tall, athletic young man with black hair like hers. He was waving frantically. When they got close, Beatrice stopped, just looking, studying every part of her son that she hadn't seen since he was little. You got so tall, she said, her voice choked.
So grown.
Lucas hugged her. I grew up, Mom, but you're still you. That night at home, Beatrice spent hours just looking. looking at her home that she knew through touch but had never seen, at photos on the wall she didn't know existed, at the garden that Ryan had maintained for years. "It's different than I imagined," she said to Ryan, "but beautiful. Everything is beautiful." But readapting to the sighted world was more difficult than Beatrice had anticipated. For 15 years, she had navigated perfectly without sight. She had systems, patterns, methods that worked. Now, with partial sight, those systems were disrupted. She reached for things relying on sight, but misjudged distance because depth perception wasn't perfect. She tripped over things she saw, but misjudged the location of. "It's frustrating," she admitted to Ryan 3 weeks after returning. "I thought sight would make everything easier, but it's almost making things more difficult. My brain is confused between trusting the sight or the systems I developed without it." "It will take time," Ryan assured her. "You're essentially relearning how to live. Again." And he was right. Over the following months, Beatrice slowly integrated her new sight with the skills she had developed while blind. She created a new balance. But there was a transformative moment. 3 months after receiving the implant, Beatrice was on the pool deck watching her athletes train. And for the first time in 15 years, she could actually see them swim. Not perfectly, not with HD clarity, but she could see the shape of their bodies in the water. She could see when an arm wasn't at the right angle. She could see when her leg was kicking too high. "Anna," she called, her voice taking on a tone she hadn't used in years. "Your left elbow's dropping in the recovery phase." Anna stopped, swimming to the edge with a shocked expression. "Coach, I can see Beatrice confirmed, smiling. "And you need to work on that elbow." The news that Beatrice could see again spread quickly. The media exploded with the story. Medical miracle. Blind swimmer received sight through neural implant, but not all reactions were positive. Some people in the blind community felt betrayed. "She was our heroine," an activist wrote in an opinion piece. "She proved we didn't need to be fixed, that we were complete as we are." And now she chose to fix her blindness. What message does that send? Beatrice read these criticisms and felt a weight on her heart. She called a press conference to address them directly. "I understand why some people feel that way," she said, sitting before dozens of cameras. "And I want to be absolutely clear. My choice to receive this implant is not a statement that blindness needs to be fixed. It is not a statement that disability is a tragedy that must be eliminated." She paused, choosing her words carefully. 15 years ago, when I completely lost my sight, I had to make peace with it. I had to learn that I was complete without sight. And I was. I am. I lived a full, meaningful, joyful life being blind. But when technology offered me the possibility of having some sight back, I chose to try. Not because I needed to be fixed, but because human curiosity is to want to experience as much as possible. If there was an implant that allowed me to fly, I would try that too. Not because walking is inadequate, but because flying would be a new experience. Her voice became more intense. Every person with a disability has the right to choose. Some will choose assistive technology, others will not. Both choices are valid. Both are personal. And no one should be judged for their choice. The press conference helped. Many people in the disability community understood and supported her, but some still criticized. Anna came to visit her that night. "Coach, don't listen to what they say. You did what was right for you. That's what matters." "But what if I sent the wrong message?" Beatrice asked. "What if young people with visual impairments now feel they need to be fixed?" "Then you keep talking," Anna replied firmly. "You keep telling your truth. You are complete blind, and you are complete now. The difference is just ... difference, not improvement, not a fix, just change." Lucas, now 18 and about to enter university on a swimming scholarship, had a different perspective. "Mommy said the people who criticize are afraid that technology like this invalidates their experiences. But you don't invalidate anything. If you expand possibilities, you show that there is more than one path, and that is a gift, not a betrayal." Beatrice hugged her son, marveling at how mature he had become. 2 years after receiving the implant, Beatrice's vision stabilized. It wouldn't improve significantly anymore, but it wouldn't get worse either. She had what she had, and she decided to do something with it. She created a foundation. The See Beyond Foundation wasn't just about promoting neural implant technology. It was about offering choices. It provided information about all options, from living completely without visual assistance to the most advanced technologies. It funded research, but it also funded training programs for people who chose not to use technology. "Informed choice," Beatrice explained, "requires information about all options. Our foundation ensures that every person with a visual impairment knows what is available and can choose what works for them." The foundation was immensely successful, and 3 years after its creation, something extraordinary happened. Lucas qualified for the Olympics. At 21 years old, he would swim the 200-meter individual medley at the Brisbane Olympic Games. Beatrice was there, of course, as a mother and as part of the U.S. coaching team. The night of Lucas's race, Beatrice was in the stands for the first time. Previously, she had always been in the coaches' area where she couldn't see, but now with her partial sight, she wanted to be where she could actually watch. Ryan was beside her. Helen on the other side. David was nearby. When Lucas entered the competition area, Beatrice saw him through her mechanical, imperfect vision. She saw him stretching. She saw him climb onto the block. She saw him assume the position. And when the signal sounded, she saw him dive. She didn't see with the clarity of a normal spectator. She didn't see every detail of his technique. But she saw forms, movement, progress through the pool. And for the first time in decades, Beatrice could watch swimming like any other spectator. Not through others' descriptions. Not through sound alone. But through her own eyes, artificial, imperfect, but hers. Lucas swam magnificently. Every transition between styles was fluid. Every turn was explosive. And when he touched the wall in second place, an Olympic silver medal Beatrice was on her feet, shouting so loudly she lost her voice. Lucas got out of the pool and immediately looked toward the stands, searching for her. When their eyes met, his natural eyes, hers artificial, he made the gesture, hand over heart, then pointing to her. Beatrice did the same back. Our signal, she thought, through generations, through technology, through everything. After the medal ceremony, Lucas ran to the stands, violating protocol but not caring. He hugged Beatrice so hard he almost lifted her off the ground. "You saw me," he said, crying. "You really saw me swim?" I saw, Beatrice confirmed, also crying. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That night, there was a celebration. But in the middle of the party, Beatrice needed a moment alone. She went out to the hotel balcony, looking at the city lights. Ryan found her there minutes later. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "I'm thinking," Beatrice said, "about how strange and wonderful life is. At 15, I thought my life was over with the diagnosis. At 24, I thought it was over when I went completely blind, but it wasn't over. It just ... changed." She turned in his arms, looking at his face that she still didn't see perfectly but saw well enough. "I swam with blindness to Olympic gold. I lived 15 years without sight and built an incredible life. And now I have this new experience of seeing again in a different way. Every phase was a gift. Every change was an opportunity." "You are extraordinary," Ryan said, kissing her forehead. "No," Beatrice corrected. "I'm just human. A human who refused to be defined by limitations. Who kept swimming even when everyone said it was impossible. Who kept living even when life went dark." She looked back at the city lights. "And you know what I discovered? Darkness is not the end. It's just a different kind of light. You just have to learn to see in new ways." 10 years after receiving the implant, Beatrice was 55 years old. Lucas was married now, with 2 children. David had retired but still visited regularly. Anna ran the largest swimming program for athletes with visual impairments in the U.S., and Beatrice still coached. She still gave speeches. She still told her story. But there was one last dream she had never realized. One last circle that needed closing. 50 meters freestyle. The distance she had swum 1,000 times in training, hundreds in competition, but never since she had completely lost her sight. "I want to swim again," she said to Ryan one morning. Competitively. One last time. Ryan was surprised. "You're 55 years old. Your body isn't what it was at 24. "I know," she replied. "I'm not trying to break records. I'm not trying to prove I'm still an elite athlete. I just want to swim. Competitively. With my new sight. To see the pool while I swim." To close the circle, she registered for the National Masters Championships. Age category 50 to 54, 50 meters freestyle. When the story leaked, the media went crazy. Olympic legend returns to competition at 55. The night of the race, the pool was more crowded than any Masters Championship should be. Thousands had come to watch, not because they cared about Masters times, but because they wanted to witness history. Beatrice was on starting block number 4. Always number 4. She wore a simple competition swimsuit, swim goggles, a cap, and she could see. She saw the bright blue water of the pool. She saw the marked lanes. She saw the wall 50 meters ahead. Everything she had dreamed of seeing during 15 years of darkness. The referee raised the whistle. "Swimmers, take your marks. ... Beatrice assumed the position, fingers gripping the block, heart pounding. Set ... She thought of everything. Of 15 years fighting retinitis pigmentosa. Of Paris and Olympic gold. Of cancer and losing an eye. Of 15 years of complete darkness. Of Lucas and Ryan and everyone who had supported her. And she thought of that 15-year-old girl who received a devastating diagnosis and was told to give up swimming. Look where I am now, she thought. Still swimming. Still alive. Still here. Beep. She dove. The water enveloped her like the embrace of an old friend. And for the first time in decades, she could see while she swam. She saw the bottom of the pool. She saw the lanes. She saw the wall approaching. She didn't swim fast, not close to her Olympic times, but she swam with pure joy. Every stroke was a celebration. Every breath was gratitude. Every movement was proof that she had overcome the impossible not once but several times. 40 meters, 30, 20, 10. She touched the wall and immediately looked at the scoreboard. 42 seconds. 10th place out of 12 swimmers, but it didn't matter. It absolutely didn't matter because she had swum, she had seen, she had lived. When she emerged from the pool, the crowd was on its feet applauding, not polite applause, a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. Lucas ran to her, now a 31-year-old man with his own Olympic medals. He hugged her, crying, "You did it, Mom, you closed the circle." Beatrice hugged him back. "No," she said, "I didn't close it. I opened a new one. There's always a new circle. A new adventure, new way to see the world." That night there were interviews. Journalists wanted to know how she felt, what was next, what the message was. Beatrice thought carefully before responding. "Throughout my entire life," she said, "I faced limitations, retinitis pigmentosa, cancer, blindness, and each time the world told me what I couldn't do. But I learned something fundamental. Limitations are real, but they are not definitions. They are just parameters within which we find creative ways to live." She looked directly at the camera. "To anyone facing a limitation, physical, mental, circumstantial, listen to this. You are more than your limitation, much more. And there are 1,000 ways to swim through life. Find yours. And swim with everything you have." Epilogue, 5 years later. Beatrice was 60 years old when she wrote the final chapter of her memoirs. Swimming Through the Darkness, the continuation. She sat in her office, wearing special glasses that enhanced the capability of her neural implant, typing on a computer with a large font she could read. The book covered the last 15 years. The implant, the readaptation, the challenges, the triumphs. But more importantly, it covered lessons about choice, about identity, about never stopping evolving. Some say, she wrote in the final chapter, that my story is about overcoming adversity. But it's not. It's about embracing change, about understanding that we are fluid beings, always evolving, always adapting. I swam as a sighted person. I swam as a blind person. Swam again with artificial sight. And I discovered that the act of swimming, the movement, the sensation, the freedom remains the same. Only the perspective changes. So to you, reader, whatever your journey, don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of darkness. And don't be afraid of light when it comes. Every phase is a gift, every challenge is a teacher, and every day is an opportunity to swim stronger. She saved the document, closed the laptop, and then she did something she did every day without fail. She went to the pool. At 60 years old, she no longer swam competitively, but she swam for health, for joy, for love of the sport that had defined her life. She dove into the water, feeling the familiar sensation of weightless suspension, and she began to swim. Stroke, stroke, breathe. Through her artificial sight, she saw the pool around her, but she closed her eyes, remembering swimming in darkness, of trusting her body, of moving through water without seeing. And she realized it didn't matter if her eyes were open or closed, natural sight or artificial, light or dark. She knew where she was. She had always known, not because she could see, but because she had swum that pool 1,000 times, because she had memorized every stroke, because she had turned limitations into mastery. The water didn't judge. The water just supported. And as she swam, Beatrice Miller, Olympic medalist, mother, coach, survivor, pioneer, smiled. Because in the end, all that mattered was this: to keep swimming, no matter the darkness, no matter the light, just to keep going. Always keep going. If you were moved by this story, leave your like now and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell because every week there is a new story. And leave in the comments, which moment marked you the most in this story? Was it when Beatrice won gold while blind? When Lucas won his medal? Or when she swam again at 55? We read all the comments. Remember, this story is about much more than swimming or blindness. It's about human resilience, about refusing to be defined by limitations, about finding 1,000 ways to see the world when the obvious way fails. Beatrice swam through the darkness. And she found light not only in her eyes, but in her spirit. Not because she was special or extraordinary from birth,
Okay.
but because she chose every day to keep swimming. And that choice, that determination, that refusal to give up, that is available to all of us in our own pools, in our own darkness, in our own lives. So wherever you are, whatever your limitation, remember, you can swim through it. You can find new ways to see. You can turn impossible into I did it, just like Beatrice did, just like you can do. Until the next story.